Who owns the African football story? African football is watched, debated, loved, and argued about worldwide. From Lagos to London, from Dakar to Dallas, from Cairo to California, from Monrovia to Montreal, from Casablanca to Chicago, from Nairobi to New York. Filled stadiums, people's living rooms, WhatsApp groups, and timeliness. It sparks pride, frustration, and lifelong loyalty. And yet, despite all that passion, African football is still often explained by people who are not close to its realities, its culture, or its future. The stories are told about Africa, rarely from Africa. And even more so, less of the diaspora considered in mind. That's the gap that this platform exists to fill. That is why we are here to let Africa tell its football story. My name is Liese. I'm a former athlete, a former vice president of the Florida Sports Foundation, and a senior consultant working across development, governance, and commercial strategy. I've sat in boardrooms. I've worked, with federations. I've seen how stories shape perception and how perception shapes value. This is not a hot take show. This is not noise for noise sake. We are not shutting down any form of critique. This is African football, told with context, honesty, respect for the people who live it. Welcome to BallAfrica. Let's start with a simple but uncomfortable question. Who currently owns the African football narrative? In most cases, it's not CAF, the African Football Confederation. It's not federations. And it's rarely African voices with long-term accountability. Instead, the story is shaped by international broadcasters with limited context, foreign media chasing moments and not systems and structure, social media clips stripped of nuance and a lot of controversy, unofficial voices filling institutional silence and void. That creates three major problems. The first one, African football becomes event-based. The world tunes in when there's AFCON. Then it disappears again. There is no sustained storytelling between tournaments or between events. No continuity. No narrative arc. The second problem, the conversation becomes reactive. It's very scandal-driven. We all saw what happened in the last AFCON final, Senegal versus Morocco. Lots and lots of, stories after that. It's crisis-focused. Development stories do not trend. Governance reforms don't go viral. Progress gets buried under outrage. The third problem, and this is actually the most critical, African football institutions don't own the relationship with the fans. And when you don't own that audience, you don't own the future value. Let me be clear. This is not talking about silencing critiques. Any critique is always healthy. And of course, it's necessary. This is about adding structure, balance, and institutional memory to the conversation. Because without that, African football will always be reacting, never leading. And this is where the African diaspora enters the picture, and more particularly, the North American African diaspora. I'll tell you why the North American African diaspora matters for African football. Let's talk specifically about the United States and Canada. The diaspora is often framed emotionally as nostalgia, as pride, as sentiment. But that framing misses the core point. The African diaspora is not just emotional. The African diaspora is very strategic. Diaspora fans are, number one, digitally native, commercially active, deeply invested in their identity. They would buy merch and shirts and polos and what have you. They stream matches. They travel for tournaments. They raise children who support African teams and navigate, Western sports systems. And most importantly, they stay engaged between tournaments. If African football wants a year-round relevance, year-round conversation, and a year-round commercial value that can monetize, the diaspora cannot be an afterthought. It has to be part of the infrastructure. Let me say this, and slowly. The African diaspora engagement is not nostalgia. It is infrastructure. It's how you build continuity. It's how you grow audience intelligence. It's how African football connects past, present, and the future. So what is this platform all about? Why am I here? Why am I talking about this? I'm going to tell you what this platform is and what this platform is not. So very clear, Africa Ball is not a gossip media, outrage farming. This is not a personal brand showcase project for Liese, who is me. This platform is not here to tear down African football for clicks. So what is this platform? It is a space for context. It is a space for long-term thinking. It is a space where players, coaches, administrators, and fans can speak thoughtfully. This is a place where African football is discussed as a cultural force, a business ecosystem, a governance challenge, a global opportunity. We will talk about AFCON, men, women, youth, but also what happens between AFCONs. We will talk about stars, past, present, and the future generation of talented African ballers. We will talk about politics, but with honesty and no noise or misleading information. This is about building a credible English language-based home for African football storytelling, especially for folks in the diaspora. Our mission, the African football doesn't need any more hype. It is already hype. You see the games, you see the pride, you see how hyped up these events are. It needs ownership of its story, ownership of its audience, ownership of its voice, ownership of its future value. This podcast is not the destination. This is the starting point. And this right here is where that begins. I am Liese. This is Africa Ball.